Welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast. I'm Kathy Little.
And I'm Melinda Wilson, and we are talking all things inner healing, true connection with Jesus, and the full benefits package of the cross. Thank you for joining us.
Well, hello, everyone. Episode 19 at your service.
We're glad you're here.
Yes, we are. And we have a really super special guest today, straight out of Alabama.
We love Amy Brown.
Yes, we do.
She is a delightful person, a wonderful friend, great sense of humor, and I gotta mention her amazing accent.
Yes, we love her accent.
We absolutely love her accent. We don't have anyone else on the podcast, not previous episodes or upcoming, that have this accent. She is a Sweet Home Alabama girl, we're very grateful that she gave us the time to sit down and interview with us.
Yeah, so Amy leads the journey groups that we talked about in the last episode. She's the director of that, and she's also the one who's done most of the lesson development for the journey groups that you actually lead. And if you missed information on that, we did talk about that in our last episode with Marcus Warner, because he's the president of Deeper Walk International, and Deeper Walk International is the ministry over the journey groups, of which Amy is the head and director of.
And founder of, yes. And she's been a mentor to me, really, in the journey groups, and has mentored me in being a journey group leader. And I'm also in one of her groups, so I get to learn from her each week. And she really has deep and profound wisdom wrapped up in a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
And so she's very easy and fun to learn from.
Yes, she is, and just absolutely delightful. And I'm really loving this content from the Deeper Walk and Life Model Works, because it really is about sustainability and walking out your healing, because a lot of the inner healing models aren't really talking about how do you walk this out and changing your brain and rewiring your brain. So we're going to get right into Amy Brown and her interview, and she actually talks a little bit more about that very thing. So here we go with Amy Brown.
We are with Amy Brown of Deeper Walk International. Is it international or just Deeper Walk?
Okay. It is Deeper Walk International.
So Amy, we're delighted that you're here with us today. Would you share with us just a bit about who you are and what your title is and what you do with Deeper Walk?
Okay, yeah. So I work for Deeper Walk International as the Journey Groups Director. And I am a mom and a grandmom, and I worked for 25 years as a paralegal. And then I started learning about connecting with God, about connecting with other people, using relational skills with some of the new neuroscience. And so I was so excited about it that I went through lots of training and started doing recovery classes in my area. And then because I wanted to stay connected with the people that I was meeting at different events, I started something called Journey Groups, which are online relational discipleship groups. And so we meet on Zoom, a video platform, and we meet once a week for about an hour, and just so I've written curriculum, and we check in with each other about how we're doing emotionally. Then we discuss whatever the lesson was for the week, and then we take time to listen to Jesus together, see what he might be bringing to light, and then we share that. And so that's been really powerful and transformational for a lot of people.
I'm going to just dive right in a little bit. You mentioned recovery.
Yeah.
And because, this whole project is about inner healing.
Yes.
And that obviously covers a lot of different areas, and inner healing can mean a lot of things. But why were you pursuing recovery? What was going on in your life?
Well, my family had kind of a crisis involving addiction in a family member, and so I had a background with some addiction myself that was kind of more like episodic and I didn't understand why it was alcohol, and I was like, why can I go for years without drinking and then something will happen and it just triggers this. So when we had this crisis, I was like, we've got to find out what is going on in our family, that this is happening. And so I started learning about the brain and the fact that the way that our brain is wired in the early years determines how well we can connect with each other. And that God has designed us so that the connections that we have with each other produces dopamine and serotonin, which are neurotransmitters that help us regulate our quiet, our joy, our negative emotions. And so if my early relationships didn't wire my brain well to get dopamine from my interactions with people, then I'm left very susceptible. So you could say that in that case, I would be dopamine starved. And so when I came across something that provided that dopamine, wow, it would suck me in really fast, or anyone who has this. And the interesting thing about this is that it's not just substances. So, there are a lot of people who might say, I've had a really bad day. I'm going to treat myself to a big dessert tonight. Or we might say, you know what? I had a friend who used to say, a new lipstick or a nail polish, and I'm good. I really like that. When I have a bad day, I want to go buy myself something. And that's fine when it is something like that. But when we are dopamine starved and we start, because when we get that dopamine, it's like a little blip, a little emotional blip that feels good. And God designed us to receive that we're supposed to be getting that from our interactions with each other. But when we turn to something non-relational, like say the shopping, so maybe after I have had a bad day and I go and I buy myself a lipstick, or I buy myself a nail polish, or I sit down and binge watch something on TV that I enjoy. Well, then there's a saying in neuroscience that what fires together, wires together. So if my brain fires and I get dopamine when I'm shopping or watching TV or having a glass of wine, that is wired together. And so the next time I'm feeling a little bit low, I'm going to turn to that again. And so then it becomes, you know what? Now I'm not going to just buy, something small. I'm going to buy myself something a little bit bigger. I'm going to treat myself to something more. I'm not going to just have a glass of wine with dinner. I'm going to have 3 glasses of wine. Or, I'm going to watch things that I wouldn't ordinarily watch because I just really want to sit on the couch and watch TV. And so when I started understanding this, boy, lights were going on in my brain. I was like, this is so clear to me, because I came from a really wonderful family, but emotionally, I would say it was kind of anemic. We didn't really connect on an emotional level. And so I realized, that is a big pain. That's a trauma. But it's also left me dopamine starved. I don't know how to connect really well. So I'm not getting that dopamine. So when I have a big pain in my life, so when a relationship would not be going well, when my husband and I would have a fight, then I would feel this need for, I'm going to have a drink, or other things for me, reading fiction, and it was not that reading was a problem. It was that I would read for hours and hours and hours and kind of ignore my children. So it just, lights came on and we understood. And so for me, the best way for me to understand something is to teach others. So I started teaching people in my community who were in legal trouble because of drugs and alcohol. I started teaching them these concepts, and they began to grab them. And so I continued with my training and in addition to working for Deeper Walk International, I'm also on staff with Thrive Today, and they do lots of interactive training with these skills.
What about people who, I mean, there's so many questions that come to mind, but for thinking about our audience who may have never even heard of, you're talking about relational skills,
right,
and connecting with people to release endorphins. Yes. And I know this is going to be new to a lot of people.
It is,
because it was to me just not very long ago. And so explain how being with people or being in a relationship with people helps us feel good or releases the endorphins.
Yeah, so think about a small child or a baby. You know, we know that babies will look at our face and we will do all kinds of silly things to get that smile. And so you think about how it feels when you get a baby to smile at you. It is just like we light up. And so what we describe as this lighting up is actually dopamine being released in our brain. And so that is that feeling when we realize that someone's glad to be with us. And so we learn to make eye contact and to smile with people to indicate, you know, hey, I'm glad to be with you. And then when they respond in a similar way, it feels good. And so in our brain, what gets a good response, we will do over and over. And so what this does is, so for that baby, what that does is it teaches them, oh, when I see somebody walk in the room, I want to track them and I want to smile at them. Because I don't know why, but when I smile, they smile. And when they smile, I feel good inside. And then the other thing about it that's so amazing is that babies know when they need quiet. So if you've ever been interacting with a baby and we, you know, maybe tickling or a-boo, you know, we're making the little sounds and everything, and the baby, we can see their energy level, they're excited, they're giggling, and then you can kind of see a little glazed look in their eye, and they look away. And if we keep going at that point, they'll start crying because it's been too much. But they know, I need to disconnect. And that quieting releases serotonin, which is so needed. So for us, this is just how God created us, that this rhythm of joy and quiet would produce what we need in our brain, what we need to be able to stay connected well. And so when we don't get that in the early years, or when we've inadvertently taught ourselves, so inadvertently teaching ourselves to get dopamine from something else, that's what most of us have done with our phones. So, you know, so there's like that little blip that we get when we see we have a text. It's not like the blip that we get in real life when we see somebody we haven't seen in a long time, but it's a little bit like that. And we feel that need to, I need to check that. I really, you know, like we might be working or in a class or something and we think, I'm going to check my email. I'm going to check my texts. We have that. Well, that is, we've trained our brains to non-relationally, you know, get that dopamine. And so we've trained our brain not to get the dopamine from interactions. And then, so we don't. And so then relationships are not as joyful. They're not as satisfying. And the interesting thing that they've learned through neuroscience, through these scans that they can do now with living people, and so they've gotten people into the labs and they've done all kinds of experiments. Let's see what lights up in a brain when a person does this or that. If we were both hooked up to scans right now, our brains would both be lighting up in certain places because we're connecting. Well, the fascinating thing is that if I were sitting here and I were praying and connecting with God, that exact same part of the brain would be lighting up. So as we learn to connect well with each other, we're actually helping ourselves be receptive to hearing from God. And sadly, when we inadvertently train our brain to look for dopamine from something else, we are muting or numbing our ability to connect with people or with God.
That's really it's so fascinating, and it almost makes me feel sorry for this younger generation who is growing up with this. And you see a 1-year-old on an iPad or a 1-year-old on an iPhone because the parents are trying to keep them entertained. But I admit I have that same connection.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
for that moment.
And not turn my phone on first thing in the morning. And Jesus is like, hey,
I'm over here.
Yeah, I'm over here.
Yeah.
And I really, what you're saying, I feel like it would be such a vital piece to inner healing, because the kind of the interviews we're doing are looking at different models of sitting down with someone, getting prayer, and they go away. But if they're not learning these kind of skills, relational skills, brain skills, then all the inner healing prayer could be great in that moment, but how do you sustain it? Exactly. I think this is kind of like, this has to be a continuum of healing. Everything that Deeper Walk is teaching in Life Model Works in relational discipleship and staying connected is so key. And I want to, that's such an important part of inner healing, is they really go hand in hand. Yes. So how do I learn I've learned to connect with Jesus in an Emmanuel prayer. How do I continue to walk that out? And then with people, and you're talking about one thing you said, that if I'm continually getting my dopamine fix, looking at my iPad or my iPhone, then relationships, how do we then teach? If I'm learning, let's say I'm learning these relational skills, I'm learning brain skills, and we'll talk about that later with a different interview, but learning relational skills, learning how to connect with people. How do I teach other people? How do we do this if other people aren't learning the same content as I am? You're telling me this is awesome, but how do I then share it with others?
Yeah, so that's hugely important. And the cool thing is that God has kept our brain chemistry with regard to this the same throughout life. So just like I learned to get dopamine from human interaction as a baby, and then maybe say I lost some of that because of the phones, or it could be something else. I learned to get, say, performance is a big thing. I learned to get my dopamine because my teacher said, Amy, you're just so smart. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to make an A next time too. I'm going to, and so, but the cool thing is, I can relearn it. My brain will get rewired as I interact. So you look and you think, these babies, nobody is saying, okay, now honey, turn, look at me. We're going to do this, and this is going to help your little brain, so pay attention. No, we just model it. We look at them and we're glad to be with them. So when we're interacting with people who don't know these things and may not be interested in knowing these things, the cool thing is you don't have to know any of the concepts at all to rewire your brain by interacting with healthier people. So when you see someone who is glad to be with you, so if I were learning these things, and when I was learning these things, I looked for people who seemed genuinely glad to be with me, because that's actually the neuroscientists have discovered that that's what your brain needs. It's like fuel for your brain, is to be with people who are glad to be with you. And they called it joy. It wasn't even the Christian neuroscientists and neurotheologians that called it joy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I thought it was just Jim Wilder.
No, they said this is joy, and it is I recognize that somebody's glad to be with me. So I looked for people that had that, and I looked for people who could quiet, who would talk with me and then sit for a moment. And I would spend time with those people. I looked for people who could handle different negative emotions because I could not handle anger. I either had to stuff it or I blew up. People who could handle shame. So a message of, hey, you're doing something that I'm really not happy with. I had to be around those people. And so we literally download our brains to each other. So when we spend time with a healthier person, or as we call it with Life Model Works, the bigger brain, then, and all of us, the encouraging thing is all of us are a bigger brain for somebody. So we don't have to think, oh, I have to look for this bigger brain and get everything from them. No, you will be giving to them as well. So we just want to look for people who have the things that we're missing. So, you know, just like if my husband wanted to learn how to do carpentry, he would connect with some of the guys that he knows that can do that and say, hey, let's spend some time together. Let's build something together and I'll learn. So in the same way, just having coffee with somebody who knows how to do joy and quiet. This is why working on projects together is such a great idea, because we naturally, just like God intended, through human interactions, we gain what other people have.
The smiling, glad to be with you, does that work with strangers on the street or like a cashier at the grocery store, making eye contact and, you know, smiling and genuinely, from my part, I don't have to say I'm glad to be with you, but hi, how are you today? Does that have the same effect?
It does, and it can make a huge difference in their life, but also that's a way to boost ourselves. So, you know, if I'm going into the grocery store and I'm thinking, oh, I've got so much to do today and I'm so busy, but if I can just stop and be present and think, you know, this person is helping me. I am going to take this moment to just enjoy this little interaction, you know, and so I can say, hey, how are you doing today? Or you look really busy. How's it going? And they smile back, and you feel that, you know, you feel that little blip, and it's like, oh yeah, I do feel a little better.
So I've noticed, you know, so many times you go into a store and most of the cashiers or people working there are looking down because they're not used to connecting. And I don't know if it's gotten worse through the years with phones. I mean, you're standing in line now, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, of, oh my God, I have to wait for 2 minutes in line. I better take out my phone. Whereas 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was no phone to take out. You just took in what was around you.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that I'm trying to be more intentional even in line. I bet, you know, 1 out of the 10 people that went through the line probably didn't even acknowledge the person working behind the counter. Are you saying that we literally could give them a boost of dopamine by smiling at them and showing them that I see you?
Yes.
Is that really what it's saying?
It is
I see
really
you?
true. And the other thing that is so powerful is that we can also help them calm their anxiety if they're having a terrible day simply by breathing deeply and smiling gently, being a calm presence in that moment. So we could change gears for their day by just taking a deep breath, talking gently, quietly, you know, not quite as loud. Hey, wow, you look busy. You okay?
That is so powerful. You're talking really about the power of connection.
It is.
And I think like Brene Brown or someone like that talks a lot about,
she does.
You know, we're connected and the power of connection, and how I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to be much more intentional about that because we're really, too, can we, you know, talking about synchronization, I don't think that's actually, let's talk about synchronization. I know that term, but that could be a new term to a lot of people. What is it? I know Life Model Works and Deeper Walk talks about synchronization. What does it mean to synchronize with somebody?
Yeah, so synchronization or attunement is just that I kind of notice how you seem to be feeling, and I match your energy level. So for instance, if you were feeling very anxious, then I would kind of match your energy level. Okay, we're kind of high energy here, but then once we connected, okay, if somebody, we're going to continue to talk about the grocery store clerks because they're a great example. So if we said, wow, you look really stressed. Oh, I am. My mom's in the hospital. Oh, that's hard. So on my face, I am matching what it must be like to have your mom in the hospital. And I am attuning with you also at an appropriate level. So you and I know each other. So if you told me something that was really big in your life, then my attunement would be probably much closer. There might be a hug or, oh, wow. So we want to keep it appropriate. So with the grocery store clerk, I'm attuning, I'm matching, but it's also appropriate to the level of relationship.
Right.
So I'm attuning to how you're feeling, and I'm keeping the relationship contingent. So that means I'm also attuning to how comfortable you are. So if I said, wow, you look really stressed, and you said, no, I'm okay, I'd say, oh, okay. So I would connect with the idea that, oh, okay, she doesn't want to really talk about this.
Okay.
So I'm still attuning.
Yeah, but you're respecting the boundaries.
Right.
What if you know the person well enough and you know that you want to help them return to joy or help them to, and I think empathy is sort of another word for that in a sense. So how would you help them return to a place of calm from an anxious place or fearful place?
So I would validate what they're feeling. Wow. So are you really worried about your mom? And let them tell me, yeah, I am super, super worried because she's, whatever. Or maybe, well, no, it's routine, but we just have to run back and forth a lot. Oh, okay. Wow, I'm glad it's not so serious, but I'm sorry you're being so rushed. Okay? And so when they realize, wow, somebody is here with me in this, they see how big it is for me, and they're, even just for that moment, they're with me. So that is called validate. I recognize how it is, how big it is for you, and comfort. You're not alone. So we can remember the phrase, I'm really sorry you're going through this. So I don't have to know what it's like for you to have been through this. I don't have to feel the exact same way that you do. But I can say, I'm really sorry you're going through this.
And you don't have to try to make them feel better.
Right.
Like a lot of Christians, we feel like we've got to try to solve a problem or, no, you have to be happy because Jesus makes us happy or whatever. But it's just bringing them, it's kind of
so
like.
The joy of the Lord is our strength. The fact that God is glad to be with me is my strength. And I can pass that to you because he lives in me, and so I can be glad to be with you. And that can be your strength in the moment. It doesn't have to be that you're now jazzed up and super excited and it's all over. No, you're still concerned, but somebody's with you. I'm glad to be with you, and that is your strength. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, thanks for asking about my mom. Yeah. And then you can move on with more capacity to handle life because somebody took a moment to be glad to be with you in your concern.
Amy, thank you so much for being with us. We're so honored that you took the time, and it gives us tons to chew on and think about and to share with others. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Amy really breaks down a lot of the concepts that neuroscientist Jim Wilder, the neurotheologian, and the psychiatrist Dr. Carl Lehman, and the theologian Marcus Warner into more layman's terms. And that's what I love about this, that it is not, doesn't require a PhD or an MD in brain science or psychiatry to apply this to our lives, because the majority of us do not have PhDs or MDs, and we just want to have healthy relationships and secure attachments and be able to not only experience joy for ourselves, but to spread the joy by connection with others, taking that moment to notice somebody and to smile and to acknowledge them can really make a huge difference. And we hear that like, oh, just smile at someone, but there's brain science that is backing up why that would cause someone, as she put it, to make their face light up.
Yeah. And I love the illustration that she kept going back to with the grocery store clerk and how that simple interaction. And, you know, sometimes we might think of it as, well, we're just honoring the clerk and showing appreciation to her, but not realizing the deeper work that could be going on and is going on because of the things that are firing in the brain in that connection. And I just want to bring this up. We were in a grocery store just a few days ago, and in the checkout line, you know, you're inundated with magazines, and 3 of them, I'm actually at this moment looking at the photos of the covers in my phone because I just took these pictures. I was standing in one spot and all 3 of these screamed at me. One had on the cover, "The Happiness Formula, How to Find Joy and Live Your Best Life." And then Psychology Today has a big emoticon on the front that says, "Big emotions, name and tame the big emotions in your life." And then Time Magazine, the cover of Time Magazine is full of emoticons, and it says, "The Science of Happiness, New Discoveries for a More Joyful Life." So this is not just something that's going on with Deeper Walk International or with Life Model Works or journey groups or even in a Christian arena. These are magazines on the rack in the grocery store. This is what's being revealed. This is the science. This is the study that is actually making the newsstands right now, is the stuff that these people from Life Model, Deeper Walk International, that they're talking about.
And I was talking with a group of people the other day about how important the greeter team at a church is, because someone may be coming to church feeling pretty miserable. I don't know about you, but I certainly have gone to church feeling pretty miserable. And sometimes I walked out just as miserable because not one person said hi. And I'm sure most of you listening could raise your hand and say, yes, that's happened to me. And that's tragic on the part of many, many churches. But the church where I currently attend, I was just making the observation that the team, unbeknownst to them, is actually helping people turn their relational circuits on, because they greet everyone with a smile, with a hug, with a "I'm happy to be with you." They either say that literally or in their smile and in their welcome. And it's actually preparing our brains for worship. It's preparing us to connect with God, because they are attuning with you in that moment, even if it's just 5 seconds of "I see you. I'm really happy that you're here. Welcome." And what a difference that makes to our brain.
Well, absolutely. And she even talked about how when we learn to connect well with each other, we're actually helping ourselves be receptive to hearing from God. So that's exactly right, that the greeting team is a core part of helping people even be ready to receive from the Lord. And she also said that when we train our brains to look for dopamine in other things, like our phones or alcohol or whatever, that we're actually muting or numbing our ability to connect with people and with God. That's quite sobering, because the whole phone thing, you know, you guys were talking about that as an example. I'm guilty of it. I'm hitting my phone every time it's, you know, something buzzes in or whatever, and you don't think about it being a shot of dopamine. You don't even know. It's something that you're even doing inadvertently or subconsciously, getting your fix from an inanimate object or from a substance or an activity, but not getting it from the eye-to-eye contact, the heart-to-heart connect. And that whole thing is it's just pretty interesting how that works. The whole science of that is quite fascinating.
That's why having the healthy, secure bonds, healthy, secure attachments in our life is so important. And if you don't have that, then ask God. I mean, really, truly, I've been in times and situations in my life. I'm very blessed to have many incredible friends throughout my life. But there's been times, of course, where I've been lonely and didn't have those secure attachments, those healthy bonds. And I've asked God to bring people into my life.
Yes.
And he certainly has. So I would just encourage anyone listening who doesn't have people to connect with to ask God, your Heavenly Father,
Yes.
to bring you a friend or two that will be that healthy bond, healthy, secure attachment with you, not just to satisfy your need, although we have a God-given, God-born need for that healthy connection, healthy attachment, but it's always reciprocal. It always is a back and forth relationship. It's how I can help you bring joy and how you can help me bring joy, just being together in healthy connection and community.
Yes, and she talks about the bigger brain. You know, we actually had somebody ask about, well, what does that mean, the bigger brain? And what she was saying and describing in a much more accessible way, that it's just being around somebody who's good at those emotional skills or that emotional maturity, the things that you may lack and want. You hang around the person that does have that down or is a little bit further down the road in emotional maturity in a certain area, able to quiet themselves, able to return to joy and get out of the back of their head from those negative emotions and learn from them and exchange with them. And she did say you always have somebody that's a bigger brain over you, but you're always the bigger brain to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so that even falls in line with a mentoring relationship. You know, we're always having somebody pour into us, and we need to be having someone that we're pouring into and having that exchange. That's just a picture of the body of Christ. We need each other. We all need each other to help us grow into maturity. So that was a pretty cool point that she made there. And then she finished up by talking about attuning, learning how to validate where someone is in a given moment and say, hey, I'm sorry, that hurts. I know that hurts.
Well, a huge part of that is being aware.
Right.
Learning.
True.
And that's the thing about all of these skills is, okay, now I'm aware. Now I can be more present in the moment. I can be intentional about helping that person, you know, attuning to that grocery store clerk or attuning to your spouse, being there for your friend, validating them instead of trying to just make them feel better. All of these skills that we've been talking about for the last several podcasts is putting words to things that may have already been coming naturally to us, but now we can know why we do this, why we need this, why we crave this, why we do it naturally, or why we haven't been doing it naturally, but now that we're aware, we can actually be intentional about it. Right. And that's just like we were talking, Amy and I were talking about being present. Yes. That's really the bottom line here is we have to be present to be able to attune with someone, to be able to validate them, to connect with them, being present with them. And that's such a huge, I think, not just theme, but something that we're missing in this generation because of and I don't just mean like younger people. I mean all of us, because of what technology has done and how it's shaped us, is that has taken us away from being present and glued us to our computer or to our laptop or to our phone. And I also am guilty of that, of what's going around me. I don't know. I was just on Facebook. I'm like, ugh. So yeah, it's just being aware. It's being aware, being mindful of what's going on around me, who's around me, who do I need to connect with right now in the moment.
I've often thought that with technology, we've never been more connected than we are right now as a society, and yet never more disconnected, because it's a false sense of connection to be able to see that so-and-so liked your comment or made a comment on something that you posted, and you think that you have a relationship with them, but you don't. You end up thinking that you're connected and that you know people because you're friends on Facebook, but it's not an interactive dopamine exchange or serotonin exchange. So that's just kind of a sad state of affairs, but it doesn't have to be. And all of us who are being exposed to this information and this content, we can make a change and make a little shift and be more intentional and be more connected rather than emailing somebody, meet them for coffee, have that exchange. So
unless your friend's in Alabama and you're in California, and it's really hard to do that. So I want to give another shout out to Amy, because she is not only a mentor to me, but a dear friend who I really love. So
yes. So thank you so much for listening to the Face to Face Ministries podcast. And hey, since you're listening here, I don't know if you're on an app or where you are listening to this, but if you would be so kind as to hit subscribe, and when you are in that podcast app, rate us, give us a 5-star rating, because hey, we think the content's pretty much golden here. Hopefully you do too. And it just takes a second or two to write a quick review. And those 3 simple things really help us get the word out. You become part of making that happen by giving us more visibility in search engines and all that kind of thing. So please take just a few seconds to do those 3 things for us. We would greatly appreciate it.
Speaking of appreciation, we deeply, sincerely, truly appreciate your listening.
Yes, we do.
And just being along for the ride with us. So thank you for tuning in.
Absolutely. And hey, we would love to have some interaction with you. You can find us on Facebook, face2faceministries.org. You can find us on Instagram at face2facemin. You can go to our website, face2faceministries.org. All one word, no space, 2 is spelled out, face2faceministries.org. We'd love to hear back from you. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, just message us. We'd really love to have some sort of interaction here with our audience. And also, we'd love to just give you the opportunity to partner with us financially for this project and for the podcast. Become a sponsor of the podcast, and you can get information about giving on our website. So thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're going to have Chris and Jen Corsi, and they lead Thrive Today, and they've got some fascinating information about emotional skills and life skills that we all need to catch when we're babies, but sometimes we miss it. So how do we get those as adults? You do not want to miss that episode. Very practical.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you for being here with us
Thanks
today.
so much. We'll catch you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.